Hello and welcome to another video. This is Jennifer McGuire. Lately I have really enjoyed making interactive cards. Well, today I'm going to create a surprise slider card. This is a card that when you pull a tab, a surprise element comes out. So I have two examples for you, and the best thing about these cards is that there are no special dies or tools needed. You can use what you probably have on hand already. So let me show you the two cards. This is the first one. When you pull a tab, the little girl skates out from behind the tree, and you can see a greeting on the tab. The other one has two tabs, so you can pull them together or separately to have a little boy and a little girl come out from behind a tree. I will be focusing on the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero kit for October. This kit includes some embellishments, glitter paper, coordinating dies, a 6x8 stamp set, so a big one packed with lots of images, and a die that adds dimension to your tree. I like how you can create some fun scenes with this, and I'll be using them on both cards today. Let's start with the first card example. On this one, you'll need a large element in which you can hide another element behind it. So I'll be using that large tree. I'm starting with the front panel. This one I will cut to 4 inches by 5 inches. I'm cutting it smaller so that my tab can hang off my card and still fit in my envelope. Now this is the key part of the card. About 1 inch up from the bottom of the card, I'm cutting a slit, about 1 inch in from the sides. I just use my trimmer to drop the blade in, do the cut, and then lift it up. You could use a craft knife and a straight edge if you prefer. But that slit is going to be the key in making this card work. Before I assemble the card, I want to do some inking. So I'm masking off underneath that slit. So I'm just using some tape to do that. And now I'm going to ink and stamp on the top. I'm using a Picket Fence life-changing brush. These are some new brushes that are wonderful for applying a light amount of color to a background. It applies the ink so evenly and so easily. I think it's because there are so many bristles and they are super soft. And I'll talk more about these in a video very soon. So I applied kind of a light bit of color around the outside edge. And then I'm going to stamp some snowflakes. I used some of the small images from the Hero Arts Stacking Snowflake stamp set. This is a new stamp set that is really neat because, check it out, you can stack those snowflakes on top of each other to create a layered multicolor look. I think it'd be really fun to make a background just filled with all these layered snowflakes. But I'm using a small snowflake from that and from the My Monthly Hero stamp set and just stamping these with soft pool ink. So I put a soft amount of color around the edges and then some soft stamping. I didn't want this to be too distracting. So here you can see the soft inking that we added to the background. Next, I stamped and colored that large tree from the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero kit. I'll use the coordinating die to cut this out. But also included in the set is this tree that cuts little branches to give it dimension. So I will cut both of these from my stamped and colored tree. But keep in mind, you could use the dies on their own and just cut it from green cardstock and get lots of dimension. Okay, so now that I've cut it out, I'm taking the one that cuts the branches, lining it up with the stamp image, running it through my die cut machine as I would a regular die. And what happens is I get little cuts that make the branches kind of peel up. And I'll show you in a little bit how you can try to keep some of that dimension to these branches even when you send it through the mail. Now I'm going to cut another tree that I've colored, and this one's going to go behind the other. I didn't cut the branches from that one, just the outline. And I'm putting some glue around the outside edges of our first tree and adding it to the second. That way, when some of the branches are peeled up and you can peek underneath it, you'll still see some green branches. And it's amazing how much texture and dimension this has. I think it's just gorgeous. Okay, so now it's time to add some stamping to our panel. I'm using my stamping tool just to make sure I don't mess up at this point. I place my tree there to kind of help me with the spacing. I'm stamping a little bench with some Copic friendly black ink, and then I'll stamp a light post next to it also. So after I've stamped these, I'm adding some quick coloring with Copic markers, but you could use any kind of coloring you prefer. I really like that this stamp set has so many images that you can use together to create a scene. I only used a few, but you could add more if you prefer. Next, I stamped and colored a little girl from the same stamp set, and I'm using a coordinating die to cut her out. I don't need to add her to my card just yet, but I am going to use her to help me decide where to stamp my sentiment. I want to make sure the sentiment is above her head. So the first part of the sentiment will be on this panel. The second part will be on that tab that we pull out the side. So I have another piece of white cardstock here. On the edge, I'll stamp the rest of the sentiment, and then I'll cut it into a thin strip. You can do any width strip that you want, as long as it fits underneath that slit that we created on our card, and you'll see that in a moment. So this will be the piece that we pull out the side of the card, but I want the recipient to know to pull that tab. So I like to stamp a small pull message on the end of the tab, and I use the Lawn Fawn Push Here stamp set to do so. Since it's small, I just stamped it with black ink, but if you want it to be subtle, you could use a lighter color. Here's that Lawn Fawn stamp set. It has lots of interactive stamps, which is great for interactive cards. Okay, so now it's time to assemble our little card here, and this is easier than you think, I promise. So just stick with me here. The next thing we need to do is add a stilt to our little girl who's skating. And I like to use Hero Arts acetate for this. You can use recycled packaging as long as it's thick. You want this to be pretty heavyweight so that it's durable. And I just cut a thin strip, about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to add this to the back of my little girl. So you could use any image you want here. You just need a clear stilt to make her taller so that we can do our interactive card. You also want to use strong adhesive to glue your clear stilt to the back of your image. I'm using Be Creative tape. So I put a piece of tape down, laid that little stilt into it, and now I'm going to put some more tape on top of it, just to be sure that it doesn't move. I won't remove the release paper from this. You could also use Scotch tape if you prefer. So now we have our image with a clear stilt on it. So you can see it there. Now what I'm going to do is put that clear stilt into the slit on our card, but I'll leave her little skate in the front of the slit. And check it out. She slides back and forth very easily. If you have a bigger image, you can make a wider stilt, just to make it more secure, but she has a small leg, and I wanted to hide it as much as I could. Okay, on the back of our panel, I'm going to add a thin piece of foam tape along the bottom. You want to make sure that when you put this down, there's enough room between this foam tape and that slit to put the tab that you cut, that strip tab. See how there's room for that to be between the foam tape and the slit. So I want to make sure that fits in there. Now you can see there is a teeny tiny bit of wiggle room between the foam tape and the slit for the pull tab to move back and forth nicely. Don't make it super tight, but don't make it so loose that it wiggles around. Just a little bit of room. Okay, now it's time to add the little girl onto that pull tab. I'm going to tuck the clear stilt through the slit and then make sure that her little skate is in front of the slit. So you can see closely there. The clear part is on the back of the slit, the skate is on the front. And now we can cut the excess of that tab or that little stilt off. So you can see that it's just a little stilt there, and I can end up taping that onto our little pull tab. Okay, now that we have that ready, let's position our pull tab. So I'm positioning it so the word pull is hanging out just a little bit. You can see there on the right. Ignore what's hanging on the left. We'll cut that off in a moment. And I'll hold the pull tab in place, keep these together, and I'll add the little girl. So I'll put the clear stilt through the slit and keep her skate on the front. And I'll position her to be in her hiding place behind the tree. This is where the tree will be, so I'm holding her there. And then I'll put a piece of tape over the clear stilt so that I can tape it onto that pull tab. Now whenever we pull the tab, the little girl will go with it. So let's flip this over and check it out. You can see I have tape over that. and I can slide her back and forth very easily. Okay, so I'm going to slide the tab in back into the best place there with the little pole hanging out. See how it's sticking out over there? Now I'll hold that in place, flip it over, and I can cut some of the excess off the other end. And then I'll put a piece of foam tape there. The reason I'm putting a foam tape there is it's a stopper. That will keep the pull tab from going too far into the card that you can't get it out again. So I have a tiny piece of foam tape there next to the end of that pull tab. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is add a piece of foam tape right above the slit. So I'm not taping the slit closed, but I'm putting it right up against the slit. This creates the little channel where a pull tab can slide back and forth. Okay, the last part here is to just cover the back of this with foam tape. I'm going to go to town and add a ton of foam tape. The reason I'm doing this is I want to make sure that the card doesn't get crushed in the mail. So then I can remove all of the release paper and I can add this onto a card. I'm adding this onto a 5 1/4 by 4 1/4 card. It's cut a little short so that our pull tab can hang off the side and they can easily grab it. Make sure the tab is in the channel when you glue it down, and there we have our little girl who slides back and forth easily. And there's no channel or anything to hide because she's sliding through that tiny little slit that you can barely see. Okay, now it's time to add some adhesive to the back of our tree. I'm only putting the adhesive around the left side and the top and bottom of the tree. We need the rest open so that the little girl can slide in and out. And I did put 2 layers of foam tape so that she had lots of room to go back and forth behind the tree. I really like this fun surprise hidden element. However, you could skip the tree and just have her skate back and forth if you wanted to. So now I'm adding some white gems to our tree just for little ornaments or whatever. And I'm making sure that I'm putting some of them behind the lifted branches. That'll force them to stay up. Another thing you could do is just add some strong liquid adhesive, like a big blob of it, behind the branches, and it'll dry with that dimension. I'm using a tonic aqua shimmer pen to add some shimmer to the ice on the bottom and around the little light that's shining in the lamppost. So here is the finished card. You can see how it fits nicely into a regular envelope because I had cut a little bit off the card when we made it. You can also see the shimmer on the bottom of the card and how you can barely see the slit in which the little girl will come sliding out along. So think about any stamps that you may have, any large images and smaller images that you can team up together to create something like this. It really is fun to do and makes for a special card. I also used the Hero Arts graphic snowflake background stamp. This is a new one. I really like the pattern. And I stamped that on the envelope flap on today's cards. I felt like it pulled everything together nicely, and that pattern is gorgeous. Okay, now it's time for our next example. This steps it up a bit. In this case, we have 2 surprise elements that you can pull to move back and forth from behind the tree. Now, today I have 2 tabs, so you can pull them out individually. But later on, I will do a video where I show how you can have 1 tab and both elements will come out. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so I'm starting this just like I did the other card. I have a 4x5 panel with that slit towards the bottom, just like before, and I inked and stamped on the top part. I also stamped and die cut and layered the tree like before, and I stamped and cut out a little girl and little boy, and I'm adding clear stilts to the back of them, just like we did on the last one. This time we just have 2 elements instead of 1 that will slide back and forth. You can see I'm using lots of tape to make sure that the stilt is very secure on the back of the images. On the back of the panel, I'll put a thin piece of foam tape along the bottom edge. Next, I'll go ahead and trim down the stilt. I'm putting the stilt through the slit, make sure the skate is on the front, and then I flip it over and I cut the excess off the stilt. I like to start with a longer stilt and cut it shorter, as opposed to ending up with a stilt that's too short, that it ends up not being very secure. And I'll do that with the little girl also. Next, I'm taking a small piece of foam tape and putting it at the center point below the slit. This will be the stopper for the 2 pull tabs coming from both sides. On one side of the foam tape, I'll add the little girl. On the other side, I'll add the little boy. And I'm going to move those stilts close to that foam tape there in the center. That way, my little girl and little boy are at the center of the card where they'll hide behind the tree. Next, I slid one of my pull tabs underneath the stilt on the right and taped it in place. Then I put my other pull tab underneath the stilt on the other side and taped it in place. Right above the slit, we're putting foam tape once again. And then I'll put lots of foam tape above that too, so everything has nice dimension to it. And you can see there are 2 channels there separated by a small piece of foam tape. Now I'm going to add this on to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/4 inch card. And you can see how the little boy and little girl skate together in the center of the card. So you could leave it like this and not put the tree over it, but I really like having that surprise element. Well, the tabs are all the way pushed in. I'm going to cut the excess off of each, and I'll stamp pull on both of those tabs, just like I did before. I'm adding doubled up foam tape to the top of the tree and to the bottom of the tree. That way the boy and girl can easily move back and forth towards the middle of the tree. So I'll press that into place and make sure that the girl and boy can easily move. For the sentiments, I'm using the Hero Arts Peace, Love, Joy stamp set. This is such a classic looking holiday set, and there are many different messages that you can build together with this. So I'll be using this one a lot this season. I decided to stamp May You Be Blessed With on a little sentiment strip to add on the front of the card. And then I'm using the cursive love image, that large one on the right, on the inside of the card. So I added the sentiment strip to the tree, and there you can see the love on the inside. And the fun thing about this card is you can pull the tabs separately. It's kind of fun to have them come out separately, or you can pull them at the same time. So think about all the different interactive pull tab cards that you can create by just making a slit in the front of your card. Now before we go, I just wanted to show you a little teaser. This is a technique that I will show you in a video coming up soon, but I decided to play around with it today using the same products. In this case, when you pull the tab, the tree itself moves to reveal a message underneath. It's just a variation of today's technique. You might be able to figure it out, but I do promise to show this in a video very soon. I just wanted to show it here because I thought that tree was really fun for many different types of cards. Okay, I hope this inspires you to create a surprise slider card. It really is fun to do, and the best part is you don't need any special tools. I thank you for watching. I list all of the supplies that I use in that description on YouTube below. You can also go to my blog for more information. In the middle are a couple of other interactive cards that you might like. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll be back soon with more videos, and have a great day.